There are moments in history when the ground trembles, not from the weight of armies but from the heavy footsteps of nations marching toward destiny. This is not a season for whispers, this is the hour when pride sharpens its blade, and power steps into the open sun. The world watches, wide-eyed, as India and America stand face to face, not merely as nations, but as symbols of two different dreams, wrestling for the crown of tomorrow. Power is not in the fist that strikes, but in the spine that refuses to bend. A clenched fist can bruise. It can force a momentary retreat, but it cannot win the loyalty of hearts, nor the respect of history. The spine, straight, unwavering, rooted in conviction, tells a deeper story. It speaks of a courage that is not born in the heat of the moment, but forged over centuries in the fires of trials, defeats, and resurrections. India's story is that of a people who have been bent by the storms of conquest, exploitation, and division, yet have never allowed themselves to be broken. Their rise is not an accident of fate, but the slow and deliberate march of a billion steps toward dignity and self-determination. They have carried the weight of hunger and hope in the same breath, rebuilt dreams from ashes, and learned that the strongest steel is always shaped in the hottest flames. Across the vast oceans, America's own narrative is equally laced with defiance and determination. It rose from revolution, from the audacity to declare independence against a world power, to build a nation that would stand as a beacon, at least in its own eyes, of freedom and opportunity. America's spine has been tested in wars fought abroad and battles waged at home, in times when its unity cracked under the strain of injustice, and yet again and again it straightened itself, claiming a place at the forefront of global influence. This refusal to bow, even under threat, has been both its greatest strength and at times its greatest flaw. When India and America face one another in the theater of global politics, it is not simply an exchange of policies or trade deals. It is a meeting of two histories, two prides, two spines that have learned the same lesson in different languages, that dignity cannot be handed to you, it must be seized and defended. The courage here is not in the act of aggression, but in the restraint it takes to stand tall without striking first. It is the courage to remain rooted in one's principles when the easier path is to bend to the will of a stronger voice. In this standoff, the true power is the ability to look an opponent in the eye without flinching, without surrendering the values that make a nation worthy of its people's trust. There is a temptation in moments like these to believe that the loudest shout wins the day, that the world bows to the one who beats their chest the hardest. But history teaches us that noise fades quickly, while quiet strength endures. India's rise is not the result of sudden noise, but of a patient persistence that refuses to be erased. America's dominance was not built in a single roar, but in generations of consistent assertion and strategic positioning. And so as they face one another, both know the stakes. The world is watching not just to see who will act, but to see who will endure with integrity intact. In the shadows of this power struggle, courage is redefined. It is no longer the soldier charging into battle, but the leader who can hold the line without sacrificing the moral high ground. It is the diplomat who refuses to trade their nation's dignity for temporary gain. It is the citizen who demands that their country stand for something greater than personal advantage. True power, in the end, is not the force that compels others to bow. It is the quiet, immovable strength that makes bending unnecessary. This is the power that outlasts empires, the power that shapes the course of history long after the noise has died away. Pride is a garment that drapes itself over the shoulders of nations, stitched together with the threads of history, sacrifice, and triumph. It is a cloak worn in celebration, but it can just as easily become a shroud that blinds the wearer to what lies ahead. For India, pride is not a luxury, it is a birthright carved from centuries of resilience. It is the hum and the soul of a billion people whose forefathers toiled under foreign rule, whose mothers whispered lullabies of freedom in the ears of their children, whose ancestors dreamed of a nation that could stand on its own feet. This pride glimmers in the rapid strides of its cities, in the hum of its industries, in the rhythm of its traditions that refuse to fade, yet it carries the weight of expectation, the constant need to prove itself worthy of its growing voice on the world stage. America's pride, on the other hand, is woven from its legacy of global dominance. It is the echo of its victories in war, its technological marvels, its cultural influence that has seeped into every corner of the earth. For generations, it has walked the world as a self-appointed guardian of liberty, confident in its ability to shape the course of history. This pride has propelled it to great heights, but it has also sometimes led it to overlook the shifting tides of power. To yield ground, even in the smallest measure, feels like an affront to the very image it holds of itself. When these two immense currents of pride meet, the waters churn with force. India seeks recognition not as an apprentice to the West, but as an equal partner, a sovereign force with its own vision for the future. America, meanwhile, resists any suggestion that its influence could be challenged, that another power might stand beside it without bowing its head. The tension between them is not merely about trade agreements or military alignments. It is about the deep, almost primal human need to be seen, respected, and acknowledged. Pride can be the engine that drives nations to excel, to innovate, to push past limits that once seemed immovable. But it can also be the blindfold that keeps them from seeing opportunity in the face of change. India's pride pushes it to protect its autonomy fiercely, to resist being molded by outside influence. America's pride urges it to defend its leadership role at all costs, even if doing so risks alienating potential allies. This is the danger of pride's double edge. The same force that lifts a nation can also be the one that leads it into unnecessary conflict. The world has witnessed time and again how pride, left unchecked, can ignite fires that burn far beyond the borders of those who strike the first spark. Yet pride tempered with wisdom can become a force for peace rather than division. When two powers recognize the worth of the other without feeling diminished themselves, pride becomes a bridge instead of a wall. The challenge lies in finding that balance, in letting pride inspire strength without allowing it to harden into arrogance. In the arena of global politics, humility is often mistaken for weakness, and pride for strength. But history has a way of revealing the truth. Strength that endures is the kind that knows when to stand firm and when to extend a hand. Pride may clothe a nation, but it is the fabric of mutual respect that allows it to stand alongside others without tearing at the seams. India and America, each wrapped in the fullness of their histories, must decide whether their pride will fuel progress or fan the flames of rivalry that serve no one in the end. Leadership is not forged in the comfort of victories, nor in the luxury of applause, but in the crucible of hard choices that carry consequences far beyond the moment. It is easy to stand tall when the winds are calm and the seas are still, but the measure of a leader is taken when the storms howl and the path ahead is shrouded in uncertainty. True leadership is not about commanding from the tallest tower, but about walking into the dust and heat of conflict with a steady gaze, knowing that every decision will ripple through the lives of millions. It is the sacred duty of shaping peace, not merely the skill of winning battles. India's ascent in global politics has placed its leaders in this very crucible. To stand as a voice for 1 billion people is to bear the weight of their hopes and the responsibility of their future. It demands the wisdom to resist provocation when pride whispers to strike, and the courage to extend a hand when suspicion insists on retreat. For India, leadership is not about bowing to older powers, or yielding to louder voices, but about proving that strength can coexist with fairness, that influence can be wielded without domination. Each move is watched not only by rivals but by allies, by citizens, by the generations yet unborn who will inherit the consequences. Across the ocean, America faces a test of its own. Long accustomed to steering the direction of world affairs, it now stands in a time when that steering wheel is no longer untested. Leadership here means more than preserving the image of dominance. It means adapting to a multipolar world where collaboration may achieve more than confrontation. The temptation to respond to every challenge with displays of power is strong, yet the truest display of power may be in showing restraint. To lead in the modern world is not to crush competition, but to cultivate partnerships that endure beyond the current decade. The great leaders of history are not remembered solely for their triumphs on the battlefield, but for the moments when they chose the harder path, the path that required swallowing personal ego for the sake of the greater good. It is easy to rally a nation for war. It is far harder to unite it in peace. In the India-America dynamic, both sides face the temptation to score quick victories in rhetoric and policy, but the wiser choice may be to invest in solutions that do not yield immediate glory yet secure lasting stability. This is the difference between a leader and a politician. One seeks legacy, the other seeks applause. Leadership at its core is a moral contract. It is the understanding that authority exists only so long as it serves those who grant it. It is not enough to simply hold office. One must hold the trust of the people, and that trust is maintained through actions that reflect integrity over impulse. In a world as interconnected as ours, the consequences of leadership or the lack of it stretch across borders, economies, and generations. The India-America showdown is not merely about strategy. It is about the character of the choices being made. The question both nations face is the same. Will their leaders be remembered as architects who built something lasting, or as combatants who won the day but lost the century? The answer will not be written in the size of their armies or the sharpness of their words, but in the wisdom of the roads they choose to walk when every eye is watching and every heart is hoping. Behind every national flag is not just a symbol but a vast collection of individual lives, each carrying a dream as delicate as glass and as fierce as fire. It is easy for leaders to speak in the language of power, strategy, and influence, but beneath those grand words lie the hopes of ordinary people who do not march on battlefields or sit in negotiation rooms. The farmer who wakes before dawn to tend his crops, praying for rain and fair prices. The engineer who pores over blueprints late into the night, driven by innovation. The student who studies with the faith that education will open doors. They are the quiet heartbeat of a nation. Their aspirations are the currency in which political decisions are truly measured. For India, this heartbeat is vast and varied. It beats in the rural landscapes where tradition still guides daily life, and in the bustling cities where skyscrapers rise alongside ancient temples. Every policy, every alliance, every confrontation in the global arena eventually filters down to these individuals, affecting the jobs they can secure, the prices they pay for goods, the opportunities their children will have. When India steps into a contest of pride and power with another nation, it is not merely its reputation on the line, but the stability and security of millions who may never see the inside of a diplomatic hall. America too carries its own chorus of dreams. The teacher in a small Midwestern town, the nurse working night shifts in a New York hospital, the immigrant entrepreneur building a new life. They live under the shadow and blessing of every decision made in Washington. Their livelihoods may be shaped by international trade agreements, by sanctions imposed, or by alliances strengthened or broken. To them, foreign policy is not a distant concept. It is the invisible hand that affects the price of their groceries, the security of their jobs, and even the peace of their neighborhoods. In the clash between India and America, the rhetoric of supremacy can sometimes drown out the reality that both nations are custodians of their people's well-being. Leaders may see strategic advantage, but the people will feel the human cost. A tense standoff can unsettle markets, raise prices, and strain industries. A breakdown in cooperation can mean delayed access to technologies, reduced educational exchanges, or slower medical advancement. These consequences are not abstract. They are deeply personal for families who live paycheck to paycheck, for students whose dreams depend on scholarships, for communities that rely on stable trade for survival. This is why leadership in such moments demands more than calculation. It demands empathy. It requires the ability to see beyond the glare of cameras and the applause of political allies, into the quiet struggles and aspirations of everyday citizens. When leaders view their people as more than numbers, when they remember that each decision echoes in the kitchens, classrooms, and fields of their nation, they begin to lead with a deeper sense of responsibility. Every clash of nations is, at its core, a contest over whose vision of the future will prevail. But the future is not built in conference rooms. It is built in the daily lives of ordinary people. The farmer and the engineer, the teacher and the nurse, The student and the shopkeeper, they are the true foundation on which nations stand. If that foundation is neglected in pursuit of pride alone, even the most powerful nations will find that their victories are hollow, and their battles, no matter how loudly won, leave their people no richer in hope. History is not carved solely in treaties signed or in battles won, but in the way nations treat one another when the scales of power tilt in their favor. The monuments of stone and the records of law will one day fade, but the memory of how power was wielded, with dignity or with cruelty, will linger in the stories passed down through generations. Both India and America are writing chapters that will be read long after their current leaders have left the stage, and the ink they use will be the choices they make in this moment of confrontation. For India, the legacy it leaves will not only be about breaking free from colonial shadows, or asserting its voice in the councils of the world. It will also be about whether it used its rising influence to build bridges, or to burn them. A legacy is measured in the friendships forged, the alliances strengthened, and the respect earned from acting not just in self-interest, but in service of a greater global good. If it stands tall but alone, history may remember its strength, but if it stands tall while lifting others alongside it, history will remember its leadership. America's legacy is no less at stake. For over a century it has been seen, for better or worse, as a global leader. That position has carried with it the power to set agendas, to influence economies, and to shape international norms. Yet leadership is not sustained by force alone, it is sustained by the trust of others. In this moment, America must decide whether its legacy will be one of clinging desperately to dominance, or of gracefully evolving into a partner in a more balanced world. History is kinder to those who recognize that their greatest strength lies not in how long they hold the crown, but in how wisely they pass it on or share it. When the dust of this India-America showdown settles, what will remain will not be the speeches given or the headlines written in the heat of the moment. What will remain are the long-term consequences, the treaties that lasted, the relationships that endured, and the wounds that either healed or festered. These are the things that shape the narrative told to children decades from now, when they learn of this time as a turning point in history. Will they hear of two nations who let pride cloud their vision, or of two giants who looked beyond themselves to see the future they could shape together? Legacy is not built in moments of ease. It is forged in moments of trial. The temptation to win at any cost can be strong, but victories bought with bitterness often leave behind a trail of resentment that poisons future generations. True legacy is earned when power is used not to crush rivals but to open doors, to heal divides, to set examples that others will want to follow. In this way, the measure of greatness is not in how many stand in awe of you, but in how many stand with you. The India-America chapter being written today will one day close, but its echoes will carry far beyond the present. Power will shift, economies will change, and leaders will come and go. What will endure is the memory of whether in this moment they chose to be architects of a shared future, or guardians of their own pride alone. That choice, above all, will be their true monument in the eyes of history. This showdown is more than a contest of might. It is a mirror reflecting the deepest truths of who we are and who we might become. India and America stand at a crossroad, where history holds its breath. If they walk with wisdom, the path ahead will shine for generations. But if they stumble into the darkness of pride, the cost will echo for centuries. Power is fleeting, but the way we wield it becomes eternal. And so let the world not only see power, let it witness grace, courage, and the kind of leadership that outlives empires.